In today's video, we're breaking down why you wouldn't last 24 hours in a Victorian house, from the shocking hygiene habits and deadly household dangers, to the daily discomforts people just accepted as normal. It's not the elegant lifestyle period dramas make it seem, and some of it is honestly nightmare fuel. Before we step inside, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more immersive history, and drop a comment telling us what modern convenience you couldn't survive without. And if you enjoy this kind of calm but unsettling look at the past, be sure to check out our other history videos linked on the channel. Alright, take a deep breath, and let's open the door to Victorian life. Picture a quiet Victorian street just after sunset. The noise of the day has faded, and a soft amber glow leaks from tall windows. Gaslight flickers behind lace curtains. From the outside, everything looks calm, respectable, almost cozy. This is the image most people carry of Victorian homes. Polished wood, heavy drapes, a sense of order and dignity. It feels warm, safe, and a little romantic, like something from an old novel where nothing truly unpleasant ever happens indoors. But that image is doing a lot of work. Step closer, not inside yet, just close enough to notice what the light does not show. The windows are sealed tight, even though the air inside is stale. The curtains are thick, but they have not been washed in years. The house looks still, but it is never really at rest. It creaks, it exhales smoke, it holds onto heat poorly and cold very well. Tonight, you are not visiting, you are staying. The door closes behind you with a heavy sound. It is not meant to be opened often. Inside, the house smells faintly of coal smoke and old fabric. Not terrible, just noticeable. The kind of smell that never fully leaves. Victorian homes were designed to impress, not to comfort. They were meant to show stability, respectability, and class. Comfort was secondary. Sometimes it was not considered at all. From a distance, everything looks elegant. Up close, survival becomes the real achievement. You might assume that if people lived here for decades, it could not be that bad. And in a way, you would be right. People did live here. They married, raised children, worked, and grew old. But living and enduring are not the same thing. Most Victorians did not expect their homes to feel pleasant. They expected them to function, to shelter them from rain, from wind, and from public shame. Warmth, cleanliness, and quiet were bonuses, not guarantees. Look around the sitting room. The furniture is heavy and dark, built to last generations. It also absorbs dust like a sponge. The carpet is thick, patterned, and impossible to clean properly. It holds years of dirt, ash, crumbs, and whatever else has fallen into it. You do not think about it yet. You will later. The fire crackles softly in the hearth. This is the heart of the house. Without it, the room would be bitter cold. With it, the air slowly fills with smoke that never quite escapes. Chimneys help, but not enough. Soot settles on walls, on ceilings, on lungs. You might cough a little. Many people do. It is normal here. Gas lamps hiss gently as they burn. The light is uneven and yellow, leaving corners in shadow. It is better than candles, but it comes with its own problems. Gas, leaks, fumes. The quiet risk that you learn not to think about too much. Victorian houses were full of things meant to soften life. Drapes to block drafts, rugs to warm the floor, upholstery to make chairs bearable. But all of it came at a cost. Fabric trapped dust, dust trapped germs. No one knew exactly how illness spread, only that it did. The house is quiet now, but not peaceful. You can hear distant sounds through the walls. A cart passing, someone coughing in another room, pipes knocking softly as they cool. The building is old enough to have its own voice. This is where the illusion begins to crack. A modern home works in the background. Heat appears when you need it. Clean water flows without effort. Waste disappears with a pull of a handle. You do not think about these things because you do not have to. In a Victorian house, everything requires effort. Heat must be fed. Water must be carried. Light must be watched. Cleanliness must be earned daily. And even then, it never fully arrives. If you stay here long enough, you begin to plan your movements around comfort that may or may not be available. Which rooms are warm? Which hours are tolerable? Which tasks are worth the energy? And this is just the beginning. It is easy to admire Victorian homes from the outside or from photographs. It is harder to imagine waking up inside one every day, with no escape from the cold walls and heavy air. This house is not trying to hurt you. That is almost worse. It simply does not care. It was built for a different world, with different expectations of what people should endure without complaint. The question is not whether Victorians were weak. They were not. The question is whether you, with modern habits and modern assumptions, could last even a single day here without feeling worn down. Could you wake up cold, breathe, smoke, wash rarely, eat poorly, and sleep lightly, all while pretending this was normal? The house waits quietly around you, full of small discomforts that add up over time. Nothing dramatic, nothing cinematic, just a steady drain on warmth, energy, and patience. Gaslight flickers. The fire settles. The room grows colder at the edges. Tomorrow morning will come early, and when it does, the house will remind you, very clearly, that elegance was always just the surface. Morning does not arrive gently in a Victorian house. It does not ease you awake with warmth or light. It simply shows up, cold and uninvited, like it has every right to be there. You wake before the sun, not because you are rested, but because your body is uncomfortable enough to give up on sleep. The room is dark, quiet, and very cold. Not a bit chilly cold. Fires were expensive and dangerous, so they were kept in common rooms, not where people slept. Bedrooms were places to endure the night, not enjoy it. You lie still for a moment, listening. The house is already awake, not with people, but with sound. Wood contracts and shifts as the temperature changes. Floorboards creak softly, even though no one is walking on them. Somewhere in the walls, something scratches. Probably a mouse, possibly several. This house never truly sleeps. When you finally sit up, the cold hits immediately. It settles on your shoulders and creeps down your spine. The floor beside the bed is even worse. You know this because you remember stepping on it last night. You delay the moment as long as you can. Your clothes are stiff with cold. Wool undergarments do not feel cozy when they have been hanging in an unheated room all night. They feel slightly hostile. Dressing is not a simple task here. There are layers. Shirts, stays, stockings, trousers, skirts. Each piece takes time. Each piece is cold. Buttons feel like small blocks of ice against your fingers. There is no radiator humming quietly to reward your effort. The room remains just as cold when you are finished as when you started. Somewhere downstairs, a fire may already be lit, if you are lucky, if you are wealthy, if someone else woke even earlier to make it happen. Fires do not exist on demand. They require planning, fuel, and patience. If you are a servant, you were awake hours ago. If you are not, you still benefit from someone else's discomfort. You open the bedroom door. Cold air from the hallway greets you, which tells you the house has many rooms like this. The warmth is concentrated in a few select spaces, like rare islands. Everywhere else is a waiting room for discomfort. As you walk, the floor complains. Victorian houses were built solid, but age gives them a voice. Every step produces a soft groan or creak. You become aware of your movement in a way modern homes do not force on you. Privacy feels thinner here. The hallway smells faintly of dust and smoke. That smell never fully goes away. It is part of the house now, soaked into wood and fabric. You stop noticing it after a while, which is probably for the best. Downstairs, the sitting room is marginally warmer. The fire has burned through the night, kept low to conserve coal. It does not heat the room evenly. If you stand close, one side of your body warms while the other stays cold. This becomes normal too. The windows are covered with heavy curtains to keep drafts out. They help a little, not much. Air still finds its way in through tiny gaps, through imperfect frames, through the simple fact that insulation is mostly an afterthought in this era. You might look at the furniture now with new eyes. The solid chairs, the thick table, all of it seems sturdy, reliable, and it is. It just does nothing to make you comfortable. Gas lamps are usually turned off during the day to save money and reduce risk. You rub your hands together, feeling the stiffness slowly ease. It will take hours for the cold to leave your bones, if it leaves at all. Many Victorians lived in a constant state of mild cold, punctuated by brief moments of warmth. This was not seen as suffering. It was simply how houses were. Complaining would have seemed unnecessary, maybe even indulgent. People adapted because adaptation was required. But adaptation takes energy, and this is just the beginning of the day. By now, you might already feel tired. Not exhausted, just slightly drained. That is the house working on you. A steady, quiet pressure. It does not attack. It erodes. Modern mornings are built around ease. Warm rooms, hot water, clothes that feel neutral when you put them on. Victorian mornings begin with resistance. The house pushes back at every movement, every comfort you expect without thinking. As the day starts, you realize something important. This place is not actively cruel. It simply offers no help. And if waking up like this is normal, then everything that follows will feel just a little harder than it should. The fire crackles softly. The light grows stronger outside. The house remains cold, watchful, and unchanged. You have been awake for less than an hour, and already, the house has begun to win. You do not notice the air at first. That is the strange part. It feels normal enough, which is exactly why it is a problem. Victorians did not think of air as something that could betray them. If it did not smell unbearable, it was assumed to be fine. Freshness was judged by the nose, not by science. Germs were still an abstract idea, half-formed and widely misunderstood. So you breathe, deeply, automatically. The fire is still burning in the hearth, its glow comforting in a room that refuses to warm evenly. Coal sits black and glossy in the grate, slowly turning into heat and smoke. Most of that smoke goes up the chimney. The rest spreads quietly. It slips into the room, into the curtains, into the carpet. It settles on the walls as a fine soot that no amount of scrubbing ever fully removes. Over time, it settles in your lungs too. Coal fires burn all day in many homes, not because people want them to, but because letting a fire die means starting from scratch later. And starting a fire takes time, effort, and fuel. It is easier to keep it going, even if it means breathing the leftovers. Ventilation is poor. Windows stay shut to keep the cold out. Opening them in winter would feel foolish, even dangerous. Why let precious heat escape? So the house seals itself, trapping warmth and smoke together in a quiet agreement. You might notice your throat feels dry, a little scratchy. You clear it without thinking. So does everyone else. Coughing is common here. It is background noise, like the crackle of the fire or the creak of the floorboards. Doctors call it winter cough or house cough. It has many names and no real solution. Look up at the ceiling. If the house is old enough, it is darker than it once was. Smoke stains bloom outward from the fireplace like faint shadows. In wealthier homes, ceilings are cleaned or repainted. In most homes, they are simply accepted. The smell of ash is everywhere, though it fades into the background quickly. Human senses adapt fast when they have no choice. After a while, you only notice it when you leave the house and return again. Then it hits you, quietly but firmly. Clothes absorb it too. Wool is especially good at holding on to smoke. No matter how often garments are brushed, they never smell truly clean. Laundry helps, but washing clothes is labor-intensive and water is limited. Things are cleaned less often than you are used to. This air is heavy, not thick, exactly, just tired. It feels like it has already been used by too many people, too many fires, too many nights without fresh circulation. In urban homes, it is worse. Outside air is already polluted by factories, chimneys, and endless coal smoke hanging over the city like a low grey sky. Opening a window might let in air that is just as bad, only colder. So most people do not bother. Children grow up breathing this air. So do servants. So do the elderly, whose lungs are already fragile. Tuberculosis thrives in spaces like this, though no one knows why yet. It simply does. Houses like this quietly help it along. You might feel a slight pressure in your chest after a while. Nothing alarming, just a sense that breathing takes a bit more effort than it should. You shift your position, sit closer to the fire, then farther away. The air changes subtly depending on where you stand. Near the hearth, it is warmer but smokier. Across the room, cooler but still stale. There is no perfect spot. Gas lamps add their own contribution. When lit, they release fumes into the room. The light they provide is useful, even impressive by the standards of the time, but it comes at a cost. Headaches are common, dizziness too. People blame fatigue, stress, weak nerves. The air is never suspected. Victorians believe strongly in bad air, but not in the way you might expect. They think illness comes from foul smells, from rotting matter, from decay. They scrub visible dirt and masked odors with perfume or flowers. Meanwhile, invisible dangers drift freely around them. You might try taking a deep breath near an open window. The glass is cold. The frame leaks air in tiny, constant streams. You can feel it if you hold your hand close. That leak is part of why the house is always cold. It is also one of the few ways fresh air enters at all. The breeze carries the smell of coal smoke from neighboring houses. Chimneys line the street, all doing the same thing, burning, breathing out. The idea of fresh air is relative here. Over time, people adjust. Lungs grow accustomed to irritation. Coughs become chronic. Shortness of breath is explained away as age or weakness. Many Victorians never know what it feels like to breathe truly clean air for long periods. You might notice the plants on the windowsill look dusty, their leaves dulled by soot. Even nature struggles indoors. Cleaning helps, but only temporarily. Dust returns quickly. Smoke never really leaves. The house absorbs it, like a sponge that can never be fully rinsed out. And still, life goes on. Meals are cooked over open flames. Water is boiled, sending more moisture into the air. Walls grow damp in winter. Mold appears in corners where sunlight never reaches. The house smells slightly different in each room, a map of what happens there. This is not dramatic. That is what makes it dangerous. Nothing feels urgent enough to change. People do not collapse from smoke overnight. They simply weaken slowly, breath by breath, year after year. You begin to understand something important. The Victorian house is not just cold, it is quietly unhealthy. Not because of neglect, but because of limits. Technology has not caught up with comfort yet. Knowledge has not caught up with reality. If you stayed here long enough, your body would adapt in small ways. You would cough more. You would tire faster. You would think less about how air should feel and accept how it does feel instead. And that acceptance is the real test. The fire burns on. The lamps hiss softly. The room fills with warmth and smoke in equal measure. You breathe in again, without thinking, and the house takes a little more from you, patiently, invisibly, as it always has. At some point, usually after you have warmed up just enough to feel human again, a thought appears. You feel dirty, not filthy, just not clean. This is a normal thought in a Victorian house, and also a slightly inconvenient one, because cleanliness here is not a quick activity. It is a project. There is no bathroom waiting with warm water and steam, no tap to turn, no gentle hum of pipes doing the work for you. Water does not arrive on demand. It must be collected, carried, heated, and protected like a valuable resource. If you want to wash, you begin by finding water. This often means going outside or down into a yard, even in the cold. The water pump is stiff in winter. It resists at first, like it is offended you are asking anything of it. Each pull takes effort. Each bucket grows heavier than expected. Water sloshes as you carry it back inside. You move carefully. Spilled water is wasted water. Wasted water means more trips, more cold, more work. Once inside, the water must be heated. That means the fire again. Everything returns to the fire. Pots are placed over it. Time passes. Smoke drifts upward. The water warms slowly, never quite reaching the temperature you hoped for, unless you are very patient or very determined. This is just for washing your face and hands. Full baths are rare, not because Victorians disliked bathing, but because bathing was exhausting. A proper bath requires multiple buckets of water, heated separately, then poured carefully into a tub. That tub might be set up in the kitchen or near the fire, then taken down and stored afterward. The process can take hours, and that is before you actually get clean. So bathing happens occasionally, weekly, monthly, sometimes less. It depends on class, weather, and energy. People do not feel ashamed about this. It is normal. Everyone knows how much work it takes. When baths do happen, the water is often shared. One person goes first, then another, then another. The water grows cooler and cloudier with each turn. This is not seen as unpleasant. It is seen as efficient. You may go last. If so, you lower yourself into water that has already lived a full life. You tell yourself it is better than nothing. You are not wrong. Soap exists, but it is not kind. It is harsh, often homemade or cheaply produced. It strips oils from the skin and leaves it dry and tight. Used too often, it can cause irritation and cracking. Many people avoid frequent washing for this reason alone. Your skin already feels dry from the cold and smoke. Soap does not improve the situation much. Daily washing usually means a basin, not a bath, a bowl of water on a table, a cloth. You wash your face, neck, hands, maybe your arms. This is considered proper hygiene. Anything beyond that is optional, and sometimes impractical. You splash water carefully, aware that every drop must be disposed of later. There is no drain to carry it away. Used water is thrown outside or into a designated area. Someone has to do this. Often, that someone is not the person who washed. Cleanliness here is never invisible. Someone always pays for it with effort. Clothes are another problem. You can wash yourself, but your clothes hold on to smoke, sweat, and dust. Washing them is an even bigger task. Laundry days are long. Physical events, water is heated in large quantities. Clothes are scrubbed by hand, rinsed, wringed out, hung to dry, often indoors in winter, adding dampness to the air. Because of this, clothes are washed infrequently. People rely on layers. Undergarments absorb sweat and are changed more often. Outer garments are brushed, aired, and reused. Smell is managed, not eliminated. This is where modern expectations quietly fall apart. You expect to feel clean at least once a day. Here, you learn to redefine what clean means. Clean enough, clean where it counts, clean when it is possible. Perfume and scented water help mask odors. Flowers are placed around rooms. Lavender sachets are tucked into drawers. These do not remove dirt. They make it easier to ignore. And ignoring becomes a skill. The house itself does not help. Dust settles quickly on every surface. Smoke darkens walls. Mud is tracked in from outside. Carpets trap everything. Cleaning is constant and never complete. You sweep, you scrub, and the house quietly undoes your work overnight. Servants, if present, spend much of their lives fighting this losing battle. Scrubbing floors that will be dirty again by evening. Polishing surfaces dulled by smoke before they are even finished. If you are cleaning yourself, you feel slightly guilty. Water you use is water someone else cannot use. Time you spend washing is time not spent working. Cleanliness is weighed against productivity in a way that feels uncomfortable by modern standards. You begin to understand why Victorian advice books stress moderation. Do not overbathe. Do not waste water. Do not indulge. Cleanliness is encouraged, but only within limits. Illness complicates everything. When someone is sick, washing becomes more important, but also harder. Warm water is needed more often. Sheets must be cleaned. Bodies must be cared for. The same limited resources are stretched thinner. Despite all this, people manage. They adapt. They lower expectations without thinking of it as lowering them. The body adjusts. The mind adjusts faster. You might notice that after a few hours, you stop thinking about bathing. The cold distracts you. The work distracts you. The house has other ways to demand your attention. Cleanliness becomes something you schedule, not something you assume. This is the quiet truth of Victorian hygiene. It is not that people were careless. It is that cleanliness required strength, time, and resources. And those things were never evenly distributed. By modern standards, this feels unbearable. By Victorian standards, it is simply Tuesday. You dry your hands on a rough towel. It smells faintly of damp fabric and smoke. Not unpleasant, just familiar. The water in the basin is now grey. You carry it carefully to dispose of it, already aware that if you want to wash again later, the entire process will begin from scratch. The house creaks softly around you, indifferent to your efforts. It has seen this routine repeated thousands of times. You are clean enough, and in this house, that is considered a success. During the day, things are manageable. If the house has an outdoor privy, you put on your coat and step outside, even in the cold, especially in the cold. The walk is short but unpleasant. Mud clings to your shoes. The air is sharp. The privy itself is basic, a wooden structure, usually shared. It smells exactly like you expect. There is no mystery here. It is functional, and that is the highest compliment you can give it. In bad weather, the experience becomes memorable in ways you did not ask for. Rain turns the ground slick. Snow makes everything slower. Ice makes everything dangerous. But you go anyway, because there is no alternative. At night, things change. Going outside in the dark is risky. Streets are poorly lit. Gas lamps are spaced far apart. Shadows gather in places you cannot see into clearly. For many households, nighttime trips outdoors are avoided if possible. So the house adapts. In the bedroom, Tucked under the bed, or hidden in a cupboard, waits the chamber pot. It is made of ceramic or metal. It is heavier than it looks, and it is about to become very important to you. You light a candle, carefully. Fire is always a concern, even for something this routine. The candle throws long shadows across the room. Everything looks larger and stranger than it did during the day. Using a chamber pot is not embarrassing here. It is normal. Children use them. Adults use them. Everyone uses them. Privacy exists, but dignity is practical rather than delicate. What matters is not the act itself, it is what comes after. The chamber pot does not empty itself. In the morning, someone must carry it downstairs and out of the house. Someone must dispose of its contents. Someone must clean it. That someone is often not the person who used it. If you are a servant, this is part of your routine. If you are not, it is still someone else's work, quietly done before the day truly begins. The smell lingers, not sharply, but persistently, even when the pot is covered, even when it is cleaned. Houses absorb these things. Wood, fabric, and air, remember. This is why Victorian homes often smell faintly wrong in ways people struggle to describe. It is not filth, it is accumulation. Human waste is part of daily life here. It is not hidden away underground. It exists close by, managed carefully but imperfectly. And where it exists, disease follows. Cholera, typhoid, dysentery. These names carry weight, but their causes are not fully understood yet. People know these illnesses appear suddenly and spread quickly. They know bad sanitation plays a role, but they do not know how deep that connection runs. Waste is sometimes dumped into cesspits near houses, sometimes into rivers, sometimes collected and removed, depending on the city and the neighborhood. Clean water sources are icily contaminated. One mistake can affect dozens of households. From inside the house, you cannot see this system at work. You only feel its effects. The faint smell near stairwells, the dampness in certain corners, the sudden illness that moves through a family with no clear explanation. You begin to notice how careful people are with food and drink. Water is boiled when possible. Milk is mistrusted. Raw vegetables are treated with suspicion. These habits are not superstition. They are survival strategies. Even so, outbreaks happen. Entire neighborhoods fall ill. Houses like this one become places of quarantine, not comfort. Sick family members are kept inside, sometimes in the very rooms where others eat and sleep. There is nowhere else. Imagine trying to rest while knowing the house itself might be working against you. At night, the chamber pot waits silently. You become aware of its presence in a way you never think about toilets now. You hope you do not knock it over. You hope it was cleaned properly. You hope morning comes quickly. The candlelight flickers as you move. Shadows stretch across the walls. The house feels closer at night. Hallways narrow. Corners feel crowded. Even familiar rooms feel different in the dark. This is when smells are strongest. Cool air holds onto them. Smoke, damp fabric, human waste, and old wood mix together into something uniquely Victorian. People grow used to it. Visitors notice it immediately. Ventilation would help. Opening windows would help. But cold and fear keep them closed. Everything here is a trade-off. Comfort for safety. Cleanliness for warmth. Morning eventually arrives. The house wakes again. Not with relief, but with routine. Chamber pots are emptied. Privies are visited. Floors are scrubbed. The system resets for another day. No one talks about this much. Advice books mention it briefly, politely. Conversations avoid detail. It is understood without being discussed. Modern bathrooms remove waste so completely that you rarely think about it again. Here, you think about it constantly, even when you try not to. This quiet awareness wears on you. It adds another small weight to the day. Another reminder that this house demands attention at all times. You wash your hands carefully. Water is cold. Soap is rough. You dry them slowly. The house creaks. Someone moves downstairs. The day continues, as if this is all perfectly normal. And for the Victorians who lived here, it was. But for you, it is becoming clear that survival in this house is not about dramatic danger. It is about enduring dozens of small, inconvenient truths, over and over, without ever getting a break. The table is set simply. No bright spread, no variety. Food in a Victorian house is practical first, pleasant second, and plentiful only if you are lucky. There is tea, weak tea, the kind that looks more like warm water that once met a leaf. Sugar is added, if available. Milk too, though milk is always a risk. It spoils quickly and is not always trustworthy. Many people water it down, just in case. You sip carefully. The tea is hot, which matters more than its strength. Warmth counts as nourishment here. If you are working class, this may be all you get. Bread and tea, sometimes porridge if oats are affordable. Sometimes nothing solid at all. Children eat the same breakfast as adults, then head off to work or school with empty stomachs and practiced patience. Meat is not a daily expectation. It is a luxury, saved for Sundays or special occasions. Even then, portions are modest. Bacon might appear in smaller households, thin and salty. Eggs, if someone keeps chickens. These are good mornings. They are remembered. In wealthier homes, breakfast looks more impressive. Eggs, toast, maybe fish, but even there, excess is frowned upon. Victorian culture values restraint. Eating too much, too eagerly, is seen as improper. Enjoyment must be quiet. Food is fuel, not entertainment. You notice how quickly people eat, not rushed, exactly, just efficient. Meals are structured around schedules and responsibilities. Lingering at the table means the fire burns longer. It means more washing later. It means time lost. The room is still cold, even with the fire going. Steam rises faintly from cups, then disappears. You wrap your hands around the mug, feeling grateful for something warm. Breakfast does not fill you the way you expect. It takes the edge off hunger, but leaves a hollow feeling behind. This is normal. Victorian diets are heavy on carbohydrates and light on protein, especially for the poor. Calories matter. Nutrition, as you understand it, is not yet a concept. People know certain foods are strengthening: meat, milk, eggs, but they do not always have access to them. So they eat what they can afford and trust their bodies to adapt. Children often eat last. Servants too. Not because anyone is cruel, but because hierarchy decides order. By the time food reaches them, it is cooler and sometimes smaller in portion. No one makes a scene about it. That would be inappropriate. You chew another bite of bread. It is dry. You reach for tea again. This rhythm repeats daily. By modern standards, breakfast feels inadequate. You expect energy, focus, satisfaction. Here, breakfast's job is simpler. It keeps you standing. There is also the question of safety. Food can be dangerous. Milk carries disease. Butter goes rancid. Meat spoils quickly without proper storage. People develop strong instincts around smell and texture. If something seems wrong, it is avoided. Hunger is better than illness. Cooking methods are limited. Everything is done over fire. This takes time. It also limits variety. Simple meals are easier to manage, easier to repeat. You may notice that no one talks much during breakfast. Conversation happens later, once the day is underway. Morning is about preparation, eating, dressing, planning. Silence saves energy. Outside, the day is fully awake now. Sounds drift in through the walls. Horses, carts, distant factory noise. Life is moving, whether you feel ready or not. You begin to understand why Victorians valued large midday meals when they could afford them. Breakfast was not meant to carry you far. It was a start, not a solution. For laborers, the gap between breakfast and the next meal can stretch painfully long. Work begins early. Hunger becomes a background sensation, ignored until it demands attention. People learn to function while hungry. It is not admired. It is expected. Children grow up this way. Hunger becomes familiar, like cold. Something you notice, then stop noticing until it becomes severe. There is a quiet discipline to this, a kind of endurance that modern life rarely asks of you, but it comes at a cost. Bodies grow tired sooner. Illness hits harder. Recovery takes longer. You finish eating. There is no second helping. Plates are cleared quickly. Crumbs are brushed away. Someone begins cleaning almost immediately. Food does not linger. You feel neither full nor empty, just sustained enough. This is another small adjustment you must make. Lowering expectations without realizing you are doing it. Accepting that meals here are about function, not comfort. In a modern home, breakfast is often the easiest part of the day, a moment of pleasure, a choice. Here, it is a calculation. What is available? What is safe? What will last? As you stand from the table, the cold creeps back in. Warmth from the fire fades quickly once you step away. The house reminds you that nothing is permanent here. Not heat, not fullness, not ease. You pull your clothes closer around you. The day's work waits. Breakfast has done its job, barely. And that is the pattern you are beginning to see. This house does not give you what you want. It gives you just enough. Enough warmth to function. Enough food to continue. Enough rest to wake again. By now, you might be wondering how anyone managed. The answer is simple and not very comforting. They managed because they had to. At first glance, the Victorian house looks clean. That is part of the trick. The furniture shines. The carpets are patterned and dark, cleverly hiding stains. The drapes hang thick and elegant, blocking drafts and sunlight alike. Everything feels solid, intentional, permanent. This is a house meant to last. Unfortunately, it is also a house designed to hold on to everything. Dirt does not pass through a Victorian home. It moves in and settles down. The carpets are the first thing you notice once you start paying attention. They are thick, often wall to wall, and impossible to lift easily. They absorb ash from the fireplace, mud from shoes, crumbs from meals, and dust from the air. Sweeping helps the surface. It does nothing for what sinks deeper. Every step releases a little cloud of yesterday. You do not see it, you breathe it. Rugs are beaten outside when weather allows. This helps, briefly. Then the house fills them again. Smoke drifts in. Windows leak soot. Shoes track in whatever the street offers that day. Cleaning becomes maintenance, not improvement. The drapes are worse. Heavy, layered, and rarely washed. Taking them down is a full-day task that requires strength, time, and space, so they stay up. Dust clings to the fabric. Smoke settles into the folds. Whatever lives in the house eventually lives in them too. Furniture is stuffed with horsehair, straw, or old fabric scraps. It feels sturdy when you sit down. It also hides years of dust and insects beneath its surface. Chairs are brushed. They are never truly cleaned. Even the walls are working against you. Wallpaper peels slightly at the edges, creating small gaps where dust collects. Mold appears in corners during winter, especially where walls meet ceilings. It is wiped away when noticed, then quietly returns. The house breathes in dirt and never exhales it fully. Cleaning is constant. Someone is always sweeping, dusting, scrubbing, and yet the house never feels finished. You clean one room, turn around, and another looks dull again. Smoke settles overnight. Ash escapes the hearth no matter how careful you are. This is not neglect. It is physics. Victorians care deeply about appearances. Cleanliness is associated with morality, order, and respectability. A dirty home reflects badly on its occupants, especially women and servants. So effort is visible. Floors are swept. Surfaces are wiped. Everything looks presentable. But beneath that surface, dirt is simply managed, not defeated. You'll notice how much effort goes into cleaning tools alone. Brooms wear down quickly. Cloths must be washed. Water must be fetched and heated just to scrub a small area. Floors are cleaned on hands and knees. This is slow, physical work. If you are wealthy, servants do this work quietly and early, before the household wakes. If you are not, you do it yourself, often after a full day of other labor. Either way, the house demands attention constantly, and it is not just dirt. Insects are part of the environment. Fleas, lice, bedbugs, they are not signs of failure. They are expected guests. People develop routines around them. Bedding is shaken. Mattresses are aired. Clothing is brushed and inspected. Sometimes it helps. Sometimes it does not. You begin to understand why Victorian homes are so enclosed. Why windows stay shut. Why fabrics are heavy. They are meant to protect against the outside world. But in doing so, they create a perfect environment for everything unwanted to stay inside. Dust becomes a fact of life. You stop seeing it unless it is pointed out. That may be the house's greatest victory. It teaches you what to ignore. Modern homes are designed to move dirt through quickly. Smooth floors, washable surfaces, light materials. Victorian homes are designed to absorb thick textures, decorative layers, visual weight everywhere. The result is a house that feels rich and serious, but also tired. Even when clean, it feels used. You run a finger along a shelf. A thin line appears in the dust. Someone cleaned here yesterday, maybe this morning. It does not matter. The house has already undone their work. This constant cycle wears on people. Not dramatically, just enough to drain patience. Cleaning never ends. There is no moment where you can stop and say, "That's done." Even Sunday rest includes light cleaning. Even holidays include maintenance. Dirt does not respect schedules. And then there is the smell. Not strong, not offensive, just present. A mix of old fabric, smoke, and human life. No amount of scrubbing removes it completely. It seeps into wood, into paper, into everything soft. People stop noticing. Visitors do not. Illness thrives here quietly. Dust carries bacteria. Damp corners harbor mold. Poor ventilation keeps everything circulating. When someone falls sick, the house does not help them recover. It holds on to whatever made them ill in the first place. You start to feel a mild itch, maybe on your arm, maybe on your scalp. It could be nothing. It could be something. You are never entirely sure. This is not fear. It is vigilance. A low-level awareness that never switches off. The house looks calm, orderly, respectable, and it is. But it is also full of life, waste, effort, and residue from everyone who has passed through it. This is how people survive here. They choose their battles. The house creaks softly as you move through it. Dust settles again behind you. Somewhere, a broom scrapes along the floor. Someone else is fighting the same quiet war. You pause for a moment, looking around the room. Everything appears neat, presentable, almost dignified. And yet, you know better now. This house is not dirty in the obvious way. It is dirty in the patient way, the way that waits you out, the way that teaches you to live with it. If you stayed longer, you would stop thinking about it entirely. That is the final adjustment the house asks of you. Acceptance. By now, you have warmed yourself near the fire more than once. And yet, the cold is still with you. It never fully retreats. It just steps back far enough to let you forget it for a moment. Victorian houses are experts at this. Heat here is localized. It gathers in tight circles around fireplaces and fades quickly as you move away. Stand too close, and one side of your body overheats, while the other stays cold. Step back, and the warmth disappears almost immediately. There is no evenness, no balance, just pockets of comfort surrounded by cold. Fires are expensive. Coal costs money. Wood takes effort to gather and store. Because of this, fires are lit strategically. 1 or 2 rooms get them. The rest of the house waits patiently in the cold. Bedrooms are the worst. At night, fires are allowed to burn low or die out entirely. Rekindling them in the morning takes time and fuel, so it is avoided. People sleep in layers of clothing, under heavy blankets, with hot bricks or bottles tucked near their feet if they are lucky. Even then, the cold creeps in. You feel it in your joints first. Fingers stiffen. Knees ache when you stand. The cold settles into bones in a way warmth struggles to undo. This is not dramatic pain. It is a dull, constant presence that makes every movement slightly harder. Water freezes indoors during winter. Wash basins develop thin sheets of ice overnight. Pitchers crack if left too close to drafty windows. This is considered unfortunate, but not surprising. People adapt by draining water at night or moving containers closer to the fire. Illness follows the cold closely. Colds, bronchitis, pneumonia, they move easily through houses like this, especially among children and the elderly. Warmth is a form of medicine here, but it is not always available where it is needed most. You notice how people cluster. Chairs are pulled closer to the hearth. Work is done near the fire whenever possible. Tasks that require warmth are planned around heat availability. Space is used differently in winter. Some rooms are simply abandoned, closed off, dark, and left to the cold until spring. The house shrinks. Families live in fewer spaces, sharing warmth and air whether they want to or not. Privacy becomes seasonal. The cold also affects mood. Days feel heavier, movements slow, tempers shorten. People speak of winter as something to be endured rather than enjoyed. Comfort is measured in survival, not pleasure. Clothing helps, but only to a point. Wool traps heat, but it is heavy and itchy. Layers restrict movement. Fingers remain clumsy, even when gloved indoors. Writing, sewing, and fine work become harder in cold rooms. Servants suffer most. They move between rooms constantly, never staying long enough to warm up properly. Their quarters are often in attics or basements, far from fireplaces. They wake cold and go to bed colder. This is accepted as part of the role. You begin to understand how much modern life relies on consistent indoor warmth, how much patience it saves, how much pain it prevents. Here, the cold shapes behavior. People plan their days around it. They accept limitations without comment. Complaining does not make the house warmer. The cold is also quiet. It does not announce itself. It simply lingers. It makes small demands that add up over time. You rub your hands together again. The fire is low now. Someone will need to tend it soon. Someone always does. Fires require constant attention. Left alone, they fade. This is another thing you must remember. Heat is not passive here. It must be maintained. At night, the cold feels closer. Darkness deepens it. Beds are layered with blankets, but sleep is shallow. People wake often, shifting positions to find warmth. Morning brings no relief. The house is just as cold as it was the night before. The cycle begins again. If you lived here long enough, your tolerance would increase. You would feel cold less sharply. Your body would adapt. But adaptation is not comfort. It is compromise. The Victorian house does not aim to keep you warm. It aims to keep you alive. And it does that well enough. But by now, you may notice something subtle. The cold is no longer shocking. It is familiar. That familiarity is both impressive and unsettling. It means the house is teaching you its rules. Endure. Adjust. Do not expect relief. You stand near the fire one last time before moving on. The warmth feels precious, fragile. You know it will not last. The house creaks softly, settling into itself. Winter has plenty of time, and so does the cold. Evening approaches quietly in a Victorian house. There is no sharp line between day and night, only a slow dimming that reminds you how dependent you are on light you can control. As the sun lowers, the house grows heavier. Shadows stretch across walls. Corners darken first, then entire rooms. You realize how much daylight has been doing for you without asking anything in return. Now, light must be made. Gas lamps are lit, one by one. The process is careful, deliberate. Each lamp hisses softly as it comes to life, releasing a thin glow that never quite reaches the ceiling. The light is yellow and uneven, more suggestion than certainty. This is progress, by Victorian standards. Before gas, there were only candles and oil lamps. Those flickered constantly and demanded even more attention. Gaslight feels modern, controlled, almost luxurious, but it has its own price. As the lamps burn, they release heat and fumes into the room. The air grows warmer but heavier. Windows remain closed to keep out the cold, trapping everything inside. Headaches become common in the evening. So does a faint dizziness that no one comments on. People blame tired eyes, or long days, or weak nerves. Gas leaks are a constant worry. Pipes run through walls and ceilings, hidden and imperfect. A loose fitting can fill a room silently. Fires start this way. Explosions too. It does not happen often, but it happens enough that everyone knows someone who knows someone. So lamps are watched. Flames are adjusted. No one leaves them unattended for long. The shadows they cast are unsettling. Furniture looks larger at night. Corners seem deeper. Patterns on wallpapers shift as the light flickers. The house feels more crowded somehow, as if it is leaning inward. Reading becomes difficult. Sewing strains the eyes. Anything requiring precision slows down. People cluster closer to the lamps, sharing light the way they share warmth. Nighttime activities are limited. You do not stay up late unless you must. Light costs money. Gas is measured and conserved. Every extra hour burns resources. This shapes behavior more than you might expect. Evenings are quieter, shorter. There is less wandering, less idle movement. The house encourages stillness. Fire remains a constant presence. Candles still exist alongside gaslight, especially in smaller rooms or bedrooms. Each flame carries risk, a careless sleeve, a draft, a moment of inattention. Victorian houses are filled with flammable materials, drapes, carpets, papered walls. One spark can become a disaster. Entire neighborhoods have burned this way. You notice how people move more carefully at night, how they glance at lamps before leaving a room, how children are warned, gently but firmly, to keep their distance. Fire is useful, but never trusted. As darkness settles outside, the world beyond the windows fades. Streets are dimly lit at best. Sounds carry farther. A shout, a cartwheel, footsteps passing by. The house feels like a small island of light surrounded by uncertainty. This is when anxiety grows, not loudly, just enough to be felt. The air grows stuffier as lamps and fires compete for oxygen. You might feel sleepy sooner than expected. Gaslight does that. It dulls the senses gently, encouraging rest whether you want it or not. This is why many Victorians associate evening with fatigue rather than relaxation. Night does not offer freedom. It offers limitation. You sit quietly, perhaps listening to someone read aloud. Books are shared this way, conserving light and effort. Conversation drifts and fades. Silence stretches comfortably, then uncomfortably. Eventually, lamps are turned down or extinguished, not all at once, one by one. The house grows darker in stages. Rooms are abandoned to shadow. Bedrooms await, cold and dim. Candles guide the way upstairs. Their light dances on the walls, making familiar spaces feel briefly unfamiliar again. You are careful with each step. Stairs are steep. Railings are polished smooth by years of hands. A slip in the dark would be painful and inconvenient, possibly worse. In your room, the candle is placed carefully, far from fabric, far from drafts. You undress quickly, not for modesty, but to get back under the blankets as soon as possible. The flame is blown out. Darkness settles instantly. There is no glow from electronics, no streetlight bleeding in through the window. Night here is complete. The house sounds different now, louder, somehow. Without light, every noise feels amplified. The wind presses against the walls. Pipes knock faintly. Something moves inside the walls again. You lie still, listening. Gaslight has done its job. It carried the house through the evening. Now it rests, leaving you alone with the dark and the cold. Sleep comes unevenly. The day has taken more from you than you expected. Your body is tired, but your mind remains alert, attuned to every sound. This is another quiet truth. Victorian nights are not restful. They are endured. The house settles around you, full of shadows and stored heat, slowly fading. Morning feels far away, and in the dark, you realize something simple and unsettling. Without light, without fire, without constant attention, this house would turn against you very quickly. So you sleep lightly, carefully, just like everyone else who has ever slept here. If you thought the dark would bring peace, you were mistaken. Victorian houses have their own rhythms at night, and silence is not one of them. Sleep is something to be stolen, not enjoyed. The house itself conspires against it, creaking and settling as if to remind you it is still very much alive. Floorboards shift under invisible weight. Walls expand and contract in the cold. Every small noise is amplified in the stillness. Outside, the city continues its work. Horses clop along cobblestones. Carts rattle. Distant factory whistles scream for attention. Even in quieter towns, someone is awake somewhere. A night watchman, a drunk, a neighbor. Sound travels easily through thin walls, carrying the lives of others into your bedroom. Inside, your fellow household members are not always silent. Children stir, parents cough, servants shuffle in the hall, tending to fires or checking locks. If anyone is ill, expect to hear their suffering echo through the rooms. Rats move in walls and under floorboards. You hear the soft scratching of their tiny feet. Sometimes they scamper in attics or kitchens. Occasionally, a loud thump startles you awake. You learn to distinguish their sounds from falling objects, but the distinction does little to calm your nerves. The bed itself offers little reprieve. Mattresses are thick but stuffed with horsehair or straw. They are firm and unyielding, good for support but bad for comfort. Blankets are heavy, woolen and scratchy. You curl under them, trying to trap warmth, but the cold still creeps through the edges. If the house is large, rooms far from the fire are even colder. Children's bedrooms and servant quarters are particularly brutal. Cold is not just an inconvenience, here it is a companion. It tests endurance quietly, night after night. Illness makes sleep worse. Tuberculosis, influenza, scarlet fever, they all make their presence felt at night. A coughing fit echoes down corridors. The smell of sickness lingers in the air. difficult to escape. Beds must accommodate multiple people in some households, spreading discomfort and disease simultaneously. Noise compounds discomfort. The creaking of the bed frame, the whisper of curtains shifting in drafts, the soft groan of the house itself, it all adds up to a constant, low-level awareness that never allows complete rest. And yet, people survive. Somehow, they adapt. Children become light sleepers, attuned to the slightest change. Adults learn to filter sound, noticing only what is urgent. Sleep becomes shallow but functional. The modern idea of a good night's sleep is a luxury. Here, it is an aspiration rarely achieved. Even dreams feel different. The body, used to cold, soot, and constant minor disruptions, cannot fully relax. The mind remains partially alert, ready to respond to danger, discomfort, or necessity. You notice a rhythm. Wake, listen, adjust, shift, repeat. Sometimes it lasts minutes, sometimes hours. Dawn eventually arrives, bringing no apology for the night endured. The house has claimed its due. You rise with stiff joints, a scratchy throat, and lingering fatigue. Breakfast awaits. Fire must be tended. Work must continue. Sleep here is survival, not pleasure. It is another reminder that this house is not designed for comfort. It is designed for persistence. You begin to understand the quiet rule of Victorian life. Nothing is easy. Nothing is given. Even rest demands effort. And yet, this is exactly how people lived. Night after night, year after year, they rose, they endured, and the house full of sound, shadow, and cold waited patiently to do it all over again. By now, you might think the house's challenges are mostly about cold, darkness, and discomfort. But there is something more insidious, lurking quietly in every room. Disease, illness is not a visitor here. It is a tenant. It lives in the walls, on the furniture, in the air you breathe, and the surfaces you touch. Tuberculosis, influenza, scarlet fever, and the occasional cholera outbreak are never far away. People expect them, but that does not make them any easier to deal with. Victorians do not yet fully understand germs. They suspect bad smells and miasmas cause sickness. They clean, scrub, and perfume their homes to ward off danger, unaware that invisible pathogens are already spreading. Soap and water help, but only minimally, and often inconsistently. When a family member falls ill, the household shifts around them. Rooms are designated for the sick, but space is limited. Often, the sick remain near the fire, which is both comforting and dangerous. Heat can help, but close proximity means everyone else is exposed. Isolation is a luxury few can afford. Beds are shared when necessary. Children lie next to parents. Siblings huddle together. Illness spreads quickly in these conditions. Survival is a quiet negotiation between proximity and protection. The air itself does little to help. Smoke from the fire, the faint humidity from cooking, and stagnant corners combine to keep pathogens circulating. Open windows help, but often only let in more cold air, forcing the family to weigh warmth against health. The house does not make these decisions for you, you must. Children are particularly vulnerable. Their bodies are small, their lungs delicate. They cough more loudly. They tire more quickly. The house shelters them, but it cannot protect them fully. You start to understand how intimately life and death coexisted here. A cough could be minor or catastrophic. A fever could fade or become fatal. People carry this uncertainty daily, without dramatics, without panic, only with quiet vigilance. Every surface, every chair, every blanket carries evidence of life and of sickness. Even after cleaning, traces linger. This is why Victorians stress moderation and routine. Everything you touch, everything you use, has a memory of past occupants. You might notice that people develop small rituals to survive. The sick are cared for with gloves or cloths. Hands are washed before meals. Clothing is layered and aired frequently. Windows are opened strategically. Even these measures are imperfect, but they are better than nothing. And despite all this, life continues. Meals are prepared. Work is done. Children play, laughing even amidst the risk. People adapt. They grow resilient, not immune, but steady. The house itself is indifferent. Illness is not a judgment. It is a constant, quiet presence, shaping daily life without fanfare. You lie in bed at night, listening to the creaks and groans, and it occurs to you that the house is full of invisible tenants. They do not announce themselves. They do not knock. They wait patiently, like the cold, like the dark. Survival here is not heroic. It is endurance. And that is why so many people manage to live, despite everything. They did not conquer the house or the sickness. They simply outlasted them. By morning, you realize that the house has already taught you another rule. Life is fragile, comfort is rare, and survival is itself an achievement. You rise again, weary, tired, but quietly impressed by the human ability to persist in this environment. The day will bring more challenges, but you are beginning to understand the rhythms of the house. It is not just a building, it is a teacher, and its lessons are relentless. If you thought surviving the cold, the dirt, the smoke, and the night was difficult for adults, children have an entirely different story. A Victorian house may look like a gentle, nurturing place from the outside. Lace curtains, polished floors, and warm light spilling from the windows. But for the youngest residents, it is anything but safe. Children are everywhere in Victorian life, running errands, playing quietly or noisily in narrow corridors, sometimes helping with chores they are far too small to manage. And yet, the house has no interest in keeping them out of harm's way. Beds are cold, rooms are drafty, night times are long and chilly. Infants sleep in unheated nurseries, swaddled in layers of cloth that do little against the icy air. Cradles are wooden and rigid, sometimes placed perilously near a window to catch fresh air, which in winter feels more like exposure than ventilation. Even during the day, danger is constant. Open fires provide warmth but demand vigilance. A small child may stumble, slipping on smooth wooden floors, or brush against a hot iron kettle left near the stove. In wealthier homes, the risks are less about scarcity and more about sheer complexity. Kitchens are bustling with scalding water, sharp knives, and boiling fats. Parental attention is divided, and the smallest lapse can result in burned hands or worse. Then there is the hidden danger of the house itself. Staircases are steep, narrow, and unforgiving. There are no baby gates or safety rails. Children climb, run, and occasionally tumble. Floorboards creak underfoot. A misstep can be painful, even dangerous. The layout is practical, not protective. Space is meant to be lived in efficiently, not padded for accidents. Food is another struggle. Children, like adults, eat what the household affords. Breakfast is thin. Lunch may be small or rushed, depending on work schedules. Even when food is available, it is often monotonous. Bread, porridge, weak tea, perhaps a small piece of meat or a boiled egg if the family is lucky. For working-class children, this means starting the day on an empty stomach before long hours in factories, workshops, or assisting in household chores. Hunger is constant. Fatigue is guaranteed. Illness is the ever-present companion of childhood. Childhood in a Victorian house is brief, fragile, and full of exposure. Tuberculosis and influenza are particularly dangerous. Scarlet fever and measles move silently through rooms. Without effective treatments, the sick remain at home, infecting others, and sometimes never recover. Mortality rates for children are staggering compared with today. Families expect loss quietly. They adapt. Surviving childhood here is a remarkable achievement in itself. Education does not necessarily make things easier. In wealthier homes, tutors and governesses attempt to instruct children, but lessons take place in cold rooms, sometimes poorly lit. Young learners shiver over books while the fire warms only one corner of the room. In poorer homes, school is short, irregular, or non-existent. Children often combine education with labor, working on farms, in workshops, or even in domestic service, all before they can fully understand what comfort feels like. Playtime, surprisingly, is not absent. Children find ways to entertain themselves in corridors, attics, and hidden corners. They hide in cupboards, run up staircases, and invent games from scraps. But even play carries risk. Dusty carpets hide small debris. Furniture edges are sharp. Sharp corners, hot stoves, and swinging doors create hazards at every turn. Even laughter echoes dangerously across hard floors. The expectations placed on children are stark. They are small adults in training. They clean, cook, fetch water, help with laundry, and attend to younger siblings. Child labor was a societal norm. Even middle-class children may be tasked with chores that sound exhausting by today's standards, assisting in kitchens, tending fires, or walking long distances for errands. For working-class children, the demands are more severe, often involving factory work, street vending, or service in large households. Safety, comfort, and freedom are luxuries they rarely enjoy. The Victorian house does not protect, it expects adaptation. A child learns early that heat must be sought, sharp objects avoided, stairs navigated carefully, and illness treated as a fact of life. Resilience becomes a survival skill, developed before childhood is even halfway over. Yet there is also tenderness in these spaces. Parents try, in ways large and small, to shield their children. Infants are swaddled, siblings are guided. Care is quietly constant, even under strain, but care is practical, not indulgent. There is no padding against life's small injuries. Protection is limited by space, resources, and knowledge. A fall, a burn, or a sudden illness is often unavoidable. Consider clothing, for example. Children are wrapped in layers to survive cold nights. Fabrics are thick, scratchy, and heavy. Shoes are stiff, difficult to lace, and do little to prevent frostbite or discomfort. Children may struggle to run, jump, or even walk comfortably, yet they do, because there is no alternative. The house does not slow them down, and society will not. Movement is necessary. Energy is survival. Meals are rarely indulgent. Children eat what adults deem sufficient. They may receive smaller portions. They often eat after everyone else, or alongside siblings, in silence. Hunger is not unusual. Fatigue from sleepless nights, chores, and outdoor errands combines with low nutrition to create children who are small but remarkably tough. Illness still looms. Coughs, fevers, and rashes may appear in a single night. A parent cannot always help. Remedies are limited, and medical understanding is incomplete. You feel a quiet dread imagining a sick child in a drafty, cold room with only blankets and hope for comfort. Death was a familiar guest in many homes, and children knew loss at a younger age than we can easily imagine. Even still, life continues. Play happens in tiny bursts. Laughter occurs, brief but sharp. Curiosity persists despite the risks. Children navigate stairs, fires, and icy floors with a mixture of ingenuity and learned caution. They grow skilled in observing dangers before they occur. Survival depends on attention, luck, and resilience. By late afternoon, the house becomes a training ground. Every day teaches children something new. Which areas are coldest? Which stairs are slippery? Which corners hide dust or splinters? And which tasks are manageable without burning hands or spilling water? Lessons are learned through repetition, not explanation. At night, sleep does little to repair them. Cold, creaking floors, noises from walls, and siblings coughing prevent deep rest. Yet somehow, they wake again. They rise, adapt, and continue. This is not heroism, it is endurance, and it is all they know. You begin to realize that childhood in this house is a form of apprenticeship in survival. Play and joy exist, but they are always tempered by necessity. Awareness grows early. Independence comes quickly. Every step is measured. Every action has consequence. By morning, children are ready to rise and repeat the cycle. Cold, chores, meals, and small dangers await. Each day is a test of resilience, often invisible to visitors, silent to neighbors, but fundamental to life inside the house. In observing this, you start to understand a quiet truth about Victorian childhood. Children were expected to endure, not just survive, but contribute, adapt, and observe. Comfort was optional. Safety was conditional. Illness, cold, and fatigue were constants. And yet, somehow, they thrived, or at least, they continued. Their laughter persists, brief and fragile, threading through the harsh environment. Their eyes are bright, their small hands nimble, their imagination active even amidst hardship. It is impossible not to admire it. Not because it was easy, not because it was kind, but because it was relentless and effective. Survival here is a skill learned from infancy. Comfort is a luxury they rarely recognize. Independence is forced, not chosen. You pause and watch a child climb carefully down a narrow staircase, balancing a candle to avoid darkness and cold. You notice how aware they are of every surface, every step, every creak. They move quietly, efficiently, yet still with curiosity and mischief. The house is not gentle. It is exacting, demanding, and full of lessons. But children navigate it, day after day, night after night. They adjust, they endure, they persist. And that is why they survived, even in a house that offers so little protection. By the time the evening comes again, bringing darkness, gaslight, and cold, children have already mastered the rhythms of survival better than most adults. They have learned where to find warmth, how to avoid injury, how to manage hunger, and how to sleep lightly. They are small, but their understanding of endurance is immense. The house may not love them, it may not shield them, but it teaches them, quietly, relentlessly, to last. In this house, surviving childhood is itself a remarkable achievement. If you think a Victorian house only challenges the family who lives there, think again. Behind every polished floor, every neatly arranged chair, every warm breakfast, there is someone quietly enduring far more than you ever notice. The servants. Servants are the invisible backbone of the household. Without them, the house would not just be uncomfortable, it would be unlivable. But their lives are rarely easy, and the house seems to have been designed to test their endurance as much as anyone else's. Most servants wake before dawn. The household may still be asleep, but the day has already begun for them. Fires need to be stoked, water carried from the pump or cistern, ashes removed, and floors swept. Every task is physical and repetitive, done under the low light of candles or dim early morning sunlight. The cold greets them first. They dress in layers, often of rough wool, and move quickly to generate warmth through activity. There is no sitting by the fire, sipping tea. Fire is for the family, for comfort and utility. The servants work near it only briefly, just enough to tend it, then retreat to the cold. Their quarters are usually attics or basement rooms, unheated and drafty. These spaces are small, cramped, and uncomfortable places to sleep, barely more than boxes for rest. Meals are quick and functional. Servants eat after preparing food for the family, often cold and minimal. Breakfast may consist of bread, tea, and a bit of cheese if available. Lunch is a hurried affair, taken between tasks. Dinner is late, eaten while cleaning up from the family's meal. There is little opportunity to sit, relax, or enjoy nourishment and comfort. Hunger and fatigue are constants. The house itself never pauses. Bells ring in the middle of the night, calling servants to tend fires, respond to accidents, or answer a sudden need. Laundry, dishwashing, and cleaning wait for no one. If a child is sick, they fetch water, help with care, and scrub bedding without complaint. The house moves according to the needs of those who live in it, not the laborers who sustain it. Cleaning is endless. Dust accumulates in hidden corners, even after hours of work. Carpets must be beaten, floors scrubbed, drapes dusted, windows polished, fireplaces cleaned. Rooms used for entertaining must appear pristine. Decorative surfaces demand constant attention, and the house will not forgive a single lapse. Even with skill and diligence, servants are never done. Tasks repeat, ashes return, dust settles, clothes wrinkle, floors are trodden on again and again. Every effort is ephemeral. The house quietly reminds them of their labor's impermanence. Danger is never far. Fires for warmth and cooking are hazards. Handling hot irons, boiling water, or scalding soups requires attention at all times. Injuries, though often minor, are frequent. Servants learn quickly to be precise, alert, and fast. Mistakes are costly in both pain and time. Sleep is brief and light. Servants often rise with aches, with muscles sore from constant motion. Their beds are in unheated attics, narrow and uncomfortable. Blankets are thin or threadbare, and cold drafts seep through slanted ceilings or window gaps. Night is rarely restful. A bell, a cough, or a creak can awaken them immediately. Yet, despite exhaustion, the work must continue. The house depends on their endurance. The family may be oblivious to this, wrapped in warmth meals and light. But without constant labor, the household would fail. Fires would die, floors would darken with soot, food would not appear, water would not be carried, and illness would spread unchecked. Servants move quietly through the rooms, appearing almost invisible. They are present but unnoticed, a necessary background to the comfort of others. Their efficiency is expected, their work uncelebrated. Hierarchy matters deeply. Senior servants manage juniors, ensuring that work is distributed efficiently. There is little time for complaint or sympathy. Every delay affects the household. Every lapse is noticed, though often silently. Respect is earned through skill and diligence, not leniency. And yet, life here is not purely drudgery. Camaraderie exists among the staff. Shared hardships create small alliances, whispered jokes, and brief moments of respite. Laughter might echo quietly down corridors when no one is watching. Stories are exchanged, advice shared, small kindnesses given and received. These are survival strategies as much as morale boosters. Even when a household is large and wealthy, the pressures remain. More rooms mean more work. More family members mean more demand. Bigger kitchens, more fires, more laundry. All of it requires endless attention. The house expands the labor, but the number of hands does not always scale proportionally. Health and hygiene are precarious for servants as well. Exposure to cold, constant lifting, and repetitive tasks take a toll. Illness spreads among staff as easily as it does among the family, and medical care is minimal. Absence due to sickness can result in reprimand or loss of employment. So many work through pain, fatigue, and fever. Survival depends on endurance, discretion, and stoicism. The pace is relentless. Morning begins before sunrise, continues through daylight, and extends into evening. Even when the family rests or dines, servants are active, cleaning, tending, preparing, and anticipating needs. Their lives are defined by the house's rhythms rather than their own, and the house demands more than physical effort. It demands constant attention, awareness, and mental focus. One must remember the location of every item, the timing of each task, the preferences of the family, and the potential hazards lurking in shadows or around corners. Inattention can mean injury, burned food, or worse, displeasure. This mental load is invisible to those who benefit from it. The family enjoys polished floors, warm rooms, and meals without noticing the hundreds of small decisions, motions, and efforts required to produce them. The house shapes their day, but it shapes the servant's life even more intensely. By nightfall, after a day that began before dawn and continued long past twilight, servants finally rest. Attics are cold, beds are hard, and sleep is shallow. Yet tomorrow, the cycle begins again. The house does not forgive, it does not forget, and it certainly does not pause for exhaustion. Watching this, you realize that the Victorian house functions not because it is comfortable or safe, but because labor is constant, invisible, and unrelenting. The family experiences ease, but only because the servants endure hardship, often without recognition. There is something quietly remarkable about this endurance. The servants do not rebel. They do not collapse under the routine. They adapt. They learn to manage cold, dust, danger, and fatigue simultaneously. They develop schedules, rituals, and instincts that keep the household functioning. In some ways, they know the house better than anyone else. They anticipate problems before they arise. They navigate its dangers instinctively. They understand where the cold is worst, which rooms are draftiest, and which fires require tending most urgently. They are, in a sense, the true masters of the Victorian home. And yet, mastery does not bring comfort. It brings control, efficiency, and survival. The house never becomes easier for them. It never stops demanding attention, strength, and vigilance. By the end of the day, you see clearly, while the family benefits from warmth, meals, and order, it is the servants who truly inhabit the house. They live in its rhythms, respond to its needs, and endure its challenges. Survival here is less about comfort and more about continuous effort, mental focus, and quiet resilience. The house may seem elegant, orderly, and even charming, but its true character is revealed in the lives of those who sustain it. Their work is invisible, relentless, and essential, and that is how a Victorian house functions, endlessly, quietly, and without pause for the family, and even more so for those who serve them. If you've made it this far in the house, you've probably noticed something subtle, almost unconscious, that never leaves you. The smell. It is there before you even realize it. A constant companion, a gentle reminder that Victorian life was never neutral, never scentless, and never fully clean by modern standards. It begins with the smoke. Coal fires, burning day and night, fill the air with a fine, persistent haze. Even when the chimneys are clear, the smell lingers. It seeps into the curtains, into carpets, into upholstery. Clothing absorbs it. Sheets hold it. Every breath carries a hint of ash, earthy and dry, sometimes bitter, sometimes just. There, you stop noticing it after a while, but it is always present. Then there is the scent of damp. Victorian houses are often poorly insulated. Rain seeps through roofs. Humidity condenses on walls. Basements smell of wet stone and mold. Even upstairs, corners that rarely see the sun harbor a faint mildew that clings to fabric, wood, and paper. You try to air the rooms, open windows, let the fire chase it away, but damp always returns. It is patient and subtle. Now add the human element. Chamber pots, emptied only in the morning or when convenient, leave their mark. Even when carefully managed, traces remain. Humidity mixes with the faint ammonia, mingling with the smoke and damp. The smell is never offensive in the sense of modern disgust, is simply there, part of the background noise of living in the house. Clothing and linens contribute as well. Laundry is washed less frequently than we are accustomed to. Wool holds odor. Heavy fabrics trap dust, smoke, and moisture. Sheets carry yesterday's scent and the day before's. Garments are layered and rarely aired, becoming slow, persistent reservoirs of the house itself. Food is another factor. Kitchens are small, often poorly ventilated, and smells travel quickly through the house. Boiled meat, broth, stale bread, and vegetables mingle. Every meal leaves its ghost in the air, clinging to woodwork, curtains, and textiles. It is comforting in small doses, but overwhelming when combined with the other scents that never truly leave. Servants' labor adds a faint medicinal tampes. Polishing agents, soaps, and perfumes are used to mask dirt or odors, yet they mix with the smoke, the damp, the coal, and the human presence. You begin to notice that no single smell dominates. It is an orchestra of subtle scents, constantly shifting depending on the time of day, the activity, and the weather. You cannot escape it. Step outside, and the air is cold, fresh, and crisp. Step back inside, and the house greets you like an old friend or a long-term roommate you can never fully avoid. You inhale, and everything returns. The smoke, the damp, the faint tank of human presence. Even your own body begins to carry the house. Your hair smells faintly of coal. Your hands, after touching furniture or curtains, retain the faint musk of wool, smoke, and dust. Your clothing absorbs the ambient scents. Soon, you are both visitor and resident of this complex olfactory ecosystem. Interestingly, the Victorians themselves barely noticed. They adapted. Their noses grew accustomed to the constant layering of odors. What might assault your senses at first gradually becomes background, a neutral condition. This normalization is a survival skill. Constant sensory input requires filtering to function. Otherwise, the house would overwhelm you, mentally as well as physically. There is also humor hidden here, quietly observed by those who survived. People joked about the smell of the house, compared it to a mixture of chimney, stew, and everything else, laughed at their inability to escape it, and developed tricks to manage it. Citrus peels near windows, lavender sachets in drawers, vinegar for cleaning, incense when guests arrived. All attempts to impose order on an environment that refuses it. And yet, no matter how clever the methods, the smell returns. It is cyclical, persistent, part of the architecture of living in a house that never sleeps, never cleans itself, and never truly rests. Smell becomes memory. You remember rooms by it. The parlor has a faint scent of wood polish and fading coal. The nursery smells of damp blankets and dust. The kitchen smells of broth, flour, and smoke. Each space carries a unique olfactory signature, marking its purpose and its residence. Guests would notice. Visitors often commented on the character of the house, meaning its scents, combined with sight, sound, and temperature. Outsiders interpreted it as charm. Insiders saw it as life, endurance, and constant labor. For children, the smell was part of growing up. They learned to navigate it instinctively, to identify areas that were cleaner, warmer, or more comfortable. They recognized scents associated with danger, illness, or activity. Smell became a tool for survival as much as any physical skill. Servants, of course, were acutely aware of the olfactory map of the house. They cleaned the kitchens, dusted furniture, and moved through rooms knowing which areas required masking odors, which would attract insects, and which were so persistent that no effort could remove them. Their noses trained, their movements efficient, they adapted completely to the ambient complexity. Visitors today might find this unbearable. Modern expectations of cleanliness and air quality make the Victorian home seem oppressive in ways that are almost humorous. But for those who lived it, smell was merely part of life managed, normalized, and endured without dramatic complaint. And like so many aspects of the house, it teaches endurance. You begin to breathe more shallowly, to notice less, to move more deliberately through rooms. The olfactory background fades into mental background noise. Survival is as much about ignoring certain things as it is about coping with them. Finally, you notice the subtle humor of it all. The house, elegant and orderly by day, is chaotic in ways that cannot be fully controlled. Smoke, damp, human presence, cooking and cleaning collide to create a unique environment. You might chuckle quietly, imagining someone lighting another coal fire, adding another layer to the invisible orchestra of smell, knowing full well that tomorrow it will be just as present, just as unavoidable. Smell, in the Victorian house, is not an accident. It is the constant witness to life, labor, illness, and endurance. It lingers because the house itself does not stop, does not pause, and does not forgive. It is, in a way, as alive as the people within it. By nightfall, after smoke, damp, cooking, labor, and life have played their part, the house smells exactly like itself, a complex, layered, slightly overwhelming presence that you carry with you even as you climb the narrow stairs to your bedroom. You pull the blankets close, inhale deeply, and realize something quietly remarkable. Surviving this house is not about comfort or pleasure. It is about awareness, adaptation, and endurance. And smell, subtle and relentless, as part of that education. If smell clings to you, then fire demands your attention. It is always there, in the background, a silent presence in every Victorian house. Not a warm, comforting fire, though those exist in select rooms. No, fire here is also danger subtle, constant, and unpredictable. Every household uses open flames. Candles illuminate bedrooms, hallways, and parlors. Gas lamps flicker in the evenings. Kitchens and fireplaces burn coal or wood. Every flame is both utility and hazard, a necessary tool that can also become disaster in seconds. Fire does not announce itself in polite ways. One moment a candle burns steadily on a mantelpiece. The next, a draft from a cracked window may flare it dangerously close to a curtain. Drapes, thick and heavy, are perfect fuel. The spark lands on the carpet. A small ember falls behind the stove. The consequences are immediate, if unnoticed. In wealthier homes, fires are tended by servants who move continuously, adding logs, adjusting flames, checking chimneys. But even expertise is no guarantee. Chimneys can catch sparks, kitchens overflow with boiling water and fat, and gas leaks create invisible risks. The house is a maze of potential ignition points. The smell of smoke is constant, sometimes faint, sometimes choking. Ash collects in corners, on mantles, and in fireplaces that are never entirely clean. Even a well-tended hearth releases embers that settle like tiny reminders of danger. The air feels alive, tense, and unpredictable. Children are taught caution, though not for comfort. They must learn quickly. Never touch a flame, never run near a fireplace, always alert when moving in dim light. But even careful children stumble. One misstep on a stair near a candle, and chaos can erupt. Accidents are frighteningly common, yet rarely preventable entirely. Fire is also a social and economic hazard. Coal is expensive, so flames are limited in duration and location. Households weigh the need for warmth against the risk of fuel depletion. Candles are rationed, lamps are dimmed. Light is functional, not luxurious. Every flame carries weight, financial, physical, and psychological. The kitchen is perhaps the most perilous space. Boiling water, hot fat, and open flames exist side by side, handled by servants moving quickly, often in low light. Mistakes here are painful. Spilled soup, splashed grease, scorched hands, all common. And yet, work cannot pause. Meals must appear on time. The house must be maintained. Survival depends on skill, speed, and awareness. Even after a careful day, nights are tense. Candles flicker in bedrooms. Fireplaces smolder. A house settling in its frame can shift air currents, sending tiny sparks into dangerous places. The smallest ember can become an inferno, and the fire of a single room can spread rapidly through the city if unattended. Entire neighborhoods have burned because of a careless candle or a neglected hearth. This threat shapes behavior subtly. People move carefully around flames. Curtains are drawn strategically. Furniture is positioned with an eye toward safety. Even in larger houses, fire defines movement. Children and servants alike learn instinctively where it is safe to walk, what to touch, and what to avoid. Awareness becomes second nature. Survival here is vigilance. You cannot relax fully around flames. Even when the fire is out, the memory lingers. Rooms are assessed, patterns of drafts noted, cloth and paper kept clear. Everything is potential fuel, and everything demands respect. Fire also creates a kind of psychological pressure. It hums in the background, like a reminder that comfort and danger are inseparable in this house. A warm hearth provides relief, yes, but it is never entirely comforting, because the same heat could destroy you if mismanaged. You grow alert to every hiss, flicker, and smell of smoke. The household runs on this awareness. Servants continuously monitor fires, adjust coals, trim wicks, clean ash. Their lives depend on this attention. Mistakes are not only inconvenient, they can be deadly. Even wealth cannot fully insulate anyone from the hazards of open flame. And yet, fire is also life. It is warmth, light, and the tool for cooking and cleaning. Survival depends on fire as much as it depends on avoiding it. This duality, the necessity and danger, defines much of Victorian domestic life. Living here is a constant negotiation between utility and risk, comfort and catastrophe. At night, when the family retreats to bedrooms and the main lights are dimmed or extinguished to save gas, small candle flames guide the way. Shadows dance on walls, heightening tension, yet providing necessary illumination. The house feels alive, alert. Every flicker carries possibility, safe or dangerous. You learn to read it instinctively. Even when the household sleeps, fire never fully rests. Hearths smolder, lamps may flicker, embers lie hidden in fireplaces. The house breathes with the presence of these flames, reminding you that at any moment, disaster could be only a spark away. And still, life continues. Meals appear, rooms are cleaned, children are watched, fires are tended. Everyone, family and servants alike, adapts. They move efficiently, predictably, and cautiously. They learn to respect fire without succumbing to constant panic. By the time evening deepens, when gas lamps flicker and candles burn low, the house seems almost alive with tension. Shadows stretch across walls, coals smolder quietly, and you realize something remarkable. Life in a Victorian house is a delicate balance of endurance, awareness, and caution. Every flame is both ally and adversary. You climb the stairs to your cold bedroom, aware of the embers below, aware of the dark, aware of the house's subtle pulse. You pull the blankets tight, grateful for warmth but conscious that it could vanish. Sleep is approached cautiously, lightly, as if any movement might jolt sparks into life. Fire is both friend and threat, constant and unspoken. It teaches vigilance, it enforces awareness, and it reminds everyone, children, adults, and servants alike, that in this house, survival is never passive. It is active, attentive, and enduring. Even in the quiet of night, the house teaches its ultimate rule. Life is fragile, comfort is rare, and every small flame demands respect. By now, you might think that surviving a Victorian house is mostly about enduring cold, dirt, illness, and fire. But there is another layer to this, endurance, one far less visible, far less tangible, but equally unrelenting. The mental strain of living inside these walls. Victorian homes are full of beauty and elegance: lace curtains, polished furniture, elaborate wallpapers, gilded frames. To modern eyes, it all seems soothing, even luxurious. But these decorations are deceptive. They are a mask over a constant, quiet pressure. The house is never just a shelter. It is a system of expectations, rules, and psychological demands that can weigh heavily on anyone inside. Consider the silence. In wealthier homes, manners dictate calm. Voices are hushed. Children are expected to move quietly. Adults conduct themselves with propriety, even under fatigue or stress. Every creak, cough, or shuffle risks a whispered reprimand. In poorer households, noise is more tolerated, but never absent. The constant vigilance over sound, over behavior, over accidents is draining. The mind never truly relaxes. Rooms are filled with reminders of social order. Furniture is arranged to display status. Artwork and knickknacks signal taste and morality. Even small children learn early that every action is observed, judged, and often compared to the ideal. The house teaches rules silently through its design, its layout, and the expectations embedded in daily routines. Living here is a subtle, continuous education in obedience and awareness. The house is also isolating. Rooms are designed for function, hierarchy, and display, not for comfort or conversation. People often spend hours separated from one another, attending to tasks, sleeping in cold bedrooms, or managing personal affairs in silence. Even in large families, privacy is minimal, but solitude is common. The combination of isolation and constant observation creates a quiet psychological pressure. Light, or the lack of it, plays a role too. Gas lamps flicker, shadows stretch across hallways and walls. Darkness is both necessary and threatening. Your mind fills in the gaps. Every movement is amplified. Every noise seems larger. The house teaches hyper-awareness, but at the cost of rest. Sleep is light, and anxiety seeps into dreams. Even in wakefulness, the house seems to pulse with expectation. Social hierarchy amplifies stress. In larger households, servants move with precision and discretion. Their lives are dictated by invisible rules. Mistakes are noted, even if unspoken. Children learn caution. Adults navigate expectations from peers, family, and society. One misstep, one breach of etiquette, could result in social embarrassment or worse, a scolding. The house reinforces these pressures silently, through its structure, its layout, and its endless attention to detail. Illness, cold, and fire compound the mental strain. Worry is constant, about safety, about survival, about the health of family and staff. Every cough, every flicker of a candle, every creaking floorboard carries potential threat. The mind cannot fully relax. Even laughter and play carry an edge of caution, an awareness that pleasure is fleeting and risk is everywhere. There is also the emotional labor of endurance. In Victorian culture, emotional expression is often restrained. Pain, frustration, grief, they are managed quietly, privately, or not at all. Children absorb these lessons early. Adults internalize them. The house, silent yet full of presence, reinforces the notion that stress is to be managed discreetly, complaints muted, and suffering endured without dramatic display. Even simple chores have a mental component. Cleaning is repetitive, endless, and highly visible. Dust accumulates again immediately. Floors must be polished daily. The effort is continuous, and the reward is fleeting. This creates a subtle psychological tension. Work is necessary, unavoidable, yet never complete. The mind adapts by focusing on tasks, compartmentalizing worry, or normalizing discomfort. Surveillance is constant, too. In wealthier homes, servants monitor the family. Family members monitor servants. Parents monitor children. The house seems alive with observation, both overt and invisible. Privacy is limited, and autonomy is measured. The presence of others, even the quiet knowledge of being watched, generates mental fatigue. Yet, humans are adaptable. Victorians developed coping mechanisms, humor, brief moments of play, whispered conversations, small personal rituals. These all help maintain sanity. Children find ways to escape the oppressive atmosphere of expectation and order, even briefly. Adults rely on patterns, schedules, and routines to navigate the mental strain. The house demands adaptation, and humans comply, learning resilience in ways both visible and subtle. Sleep, already compromised by cold, noise, and light, is also disturbed by psychological tension. Anxiety, vigilance, and anticipation intrude on dreams. The mind remains partially alert even during rest, because the house has taught the body to remain prepared. Fatigue accumulates, yet life continues. Survival is mental as much as physical. Even seemingly innocuous features of the house contribute to stress. Elaborate decoration can overwhelm the senses. Ornate patterns, dense furniture arrangements, and heavy fabrics create visual and tactile stimuli that constantly demand attention. The mind never fully relaxes, processing detail after detail, habit after habit, rule after rule. This mental strain is cumulative. Each day adds layers of tension, awareness, and vigilance. By evening, the house feels like a living entity, always present, always observing, always demanding. Comfort is fleeting, rest is partial, anxiety is background noise, and yet, people endure. Children, servants, and adults alike develop remarkable psychological resilience. They learn to filter, ignore, and adapt. They compartmentalize risk, discomfort, and observation. They normalize strain, transforming constant pressure into survival skill. The house, for all its elegance, becomes a teacher of endurance, shaping minds as surely as it shapes bodies. In quieter moments, when gas lamps flicker and the house settles into its nighttime rhythm, the strain is almost tangible. You feel it in your shoulders, your chest, in the slight tension of your muscles as you move carefully, aware of every shadow and every creak. You notice how the mind adjusts, how perception sharpens, how survival depends as much on mental alertness as on physical endurance. Yet, there is also a strange calmness in this awareness. The house is predictable, if demanding. Rituals, routines, and repetition create structure. The mind learns to anticipate, to prepare, to endure. Survival becomes less about heroism and more about quiet, steady observation. Life inside the walls is exacting, but it is also comprehensible. By the end of the day, after meals, chores, and the careful tending of fire and light, the house has taught its final lesson in mental strain. Endurance is not just physical, not just about warmth or safety. It is about attention, awareness, and adaptation. Comfort is rare, pleasure is fleeting, and mental resilience is essential. You climb the stairs, aware of shadows, creaks, smells, and embers. You pull the blankets tight, feeling both relief and a quiet tension. The house, decorative and imposing, alive and demanding, has once again reinforced its message. Life here is never easy, never predictable, and never fully comfortable. But survival is possible if you are alert, resilient, and persistent. And in this realization, you begin to understand why Victorian people were capable of enduring so much. It was not just the cold, the dirt, the illness, or the flames that shaped them. It was the quiet, invisible pressure of the house itself, its rules, its expectations, its constant presence that trained the mind to endure, adapt, and survive day after day, night after night. In the end, survival in a Victorian house is not measured by comfort, but by persistence. And mental endurance, cultivated within decorative walls, is as essential as physical stamina, warmth, or skill. The house never stops, but neither do the people who live in it. They continue, quietly, endlessly, teaching us that life inside these walls demanded more than we often imagine, and that endurance, even in the face of relentless pressure, was the ultimate achievement. Night changes everything. The day's activity slows, fires burn lower, and shadows stretch across the house like long, silent fingers. It is a time when the cold returns, the darkness deepens, and the full weight of the house's presence becomes unmistakable. Even in a warm room, the chill finds its way into corners. Drapes hang heavy, trapping residual drafts that slip along the floorboards. Windows creak in the wind, rattling with a sound that seems louder than any daytime noise. The walls sigh, as if the house itself is settling for the night. Every step echoes, every footfall carries tension. Even familiar spaces feel smaller, closer, and more immediate. Gas lamps flicker uneasily, their weak light casts dancing shadows that exaggerate shapes and edges. Furniture seems more imposing, corners sharper, hallways narrower. You notice the subtle play of light and shadow that transforms ordinary objects into almost menacing silhouettes. A chair is no longer just a chair. It is a looming presence, waiting silently in the dim glow. The house seems to close in. Hallways that were easy to navigate in daylight feel like corridors of caution. Staircases are steeper, floors are colder, and every creak seems amplified. Even the air feels heavier, carrying a mixture of smoke, damp, human presence, and the faint tang of cooking from hours earlier. The house has a scent now that is richer, denser, more insistent, a reminder that life continues here, even when people sleep. Sleep is precarious. Children stir, coughing softly in their unheated rooms. Servants, after long hours of labor, rest lightly, alert to the smallest noise. Adults find themselves pulled between exhaustion and anxiety, aware of embers in the hearth, candles flickering too close to drapes, and shadows that seem to move with intention. The mind, trained by the house during the day, refuses to fully relax. Even the familiar becomes strange at night. Doorways seem narrower, walls appear closer. Rooms exude the weight of their past, the labor, the illness, the meals prepared, the children's play, the servants' footsteps. Every corner carries the memory of activity, the imprint of presence. The house is alive in a subtle, almost imperceptible way. The fire's warmth is limited. Only certain rooms are heated. The rest of the house is cold, frost creeping along window panes, condensation forming in corners, ice crystals near the wash basin. Those unheated spaces demand vigilance. Children sleep bundled in layers of wool, blankets, and hope. Servants retreat to cramped attics. Adults draw curtains tightly against drafts, seeking whatever warmth remains. Survival is an active, deliberate effort, even in sleep. Night amplifies sensory awareness. Every sound is sharper, the wind through eaves, the whistle of a pipe, the distant clatter of horse hooves on cobblestone. Even faint smells become more prominent. Coal smoke, damp fabrics, lingering cooking aromas. The house envelops you, its presence undeniable, almost tactile. You can feel its weight pressing gently against the body, reminding you that it never fully sleeps, never fully releases its hold. Loneliness or isolation intensifies in these hours. Rooms are separated by doors, floors, or staircases. Even families sleep apart. Silence is punctuated by small, telling noises: a cough, a creak, a distant shuffle. The psychological weight of solitude mixes with vigilance, sharpening awareness and reinforcing endurance. The house teaches constant alertness, even when you are physically exhausted. Yet, there is also a strange calm here. The rhythmic sounds, the groan of beams, the soft crackle of dying fire, the occasional whisper of movement become predictable, almost meditative. Humans adapt. Minds learn to filter, to rest lightly while maintaining awareness. The house becomes a teacher of subtle endurance, demanding mental and physical presence in equal measure. Shadows and dim light shape perception. A hallway may seem narrower, a room taller. Objects seem to move, though they do not. The mind, trained by daylight vigilance, continues to anticipate, to assess risk, to navigate space with caution. Fear is muted, not absent, a constant companion guiding careful movement. You notice how the house seems to breathe with you. Walls expand and contract slightly with temperature changes. Floorboards settle, chimneys sigh. Even in darkness, the house communicates through sound, temperature, and scent. Its presence is gentle but relentless, teaching awareness, patience, and caution. Night also emphasizes separation. Servants retreat to their quarters. Children sleep in cold rooms. Adults seek isolated spaces for rest. The house stretches itself across these divisions, occupying all areas, observing all activity. The subtle pressures of daytime rules, expectations, chores become mental echoes at night, persistent but quieter. Yet, adaptation continues. Candles are trimmed, fires adjusted, blankets tucked. People move with learned precision. They adjust to discomfort. They find warmth where they can. They manage fear with knowledge of the house's rhythms. Every small action is a survival strategy, executed almost unconsciously after months or years of experience. Night magnifies the lessons of the house. Cold teaches preparation. Shadows teach attention. Smells teach awareness. Fire teaches respect. Isolation teaches vigilance. Each element, intensified by darkness and quiet, trains endurance, molding resilience in ways the day only hints at. By the final hours before dawn, you understand something profound. The house never truly rests. Its presence, though less active, is undeniable. It presses close, not with malevolence, but with constant, quiet expectation. Every wall, every floorboard, every shadow reminds you that survival here requires more than warmth or shelter. It requires attention, adaptation, and persistence. And yet, there is beauty in this rhythm. The subtle groan of wood, the flicker of candlelight, the distant muffled sounds of a sleeping household all combine into a meditative experience. You are alert but calm, tense but observant, aware but accepting. The house teaches endurance not through violence or force, but through gentle, relentless immersion. In these quiet hours, you recognize why so many survived. Despite the cold, the illness, the smells, and the constant dangers, the house shapes its inhabitants in subtle ways. It molds vigilance, patience, resilience, and awareness. It teaches that life is fragile, comfort is temporary, and persistence is the true measure of survival. By dawn, when the first weak light filters through lace curtains, the house seems slightly less imposing. Shadows shrink, cold recedes, and warmth returns to some rooms. Yet the lessons remain. The night has passed, but its teachings linger in muscles, in awareness, in memory. You climb downstairs, stretch tired limbs, and realize the quiet truth of the house. Life here is never easy. Comfort is rare. Danger is subtle but constant. Survival is a skill learned through observation, adaptation, and quiet endurance. The house never stops, but neither do its inhabitants. Night falls, the house presses closer, and the people inside continue to endure, quietly, persistently, and remarkably, showing that survival is not just about physical endurance, it is about living fully within the rhythms, pressures, and subtle lessons of a Victorian house. By now, after hours or rather, days spent moving through the rooms, halls, and hidden corners of a Victorian house, you've probably noticed something. Survival here was never simple. It wasn't about comfort, elegance, or even pleasure. It was about endurance, quiet, steady, and constant. Think about what you've experienced. Cold that seeps into your bones, even indoors. Smoke and soot that cling to your clothes and hair. Limited water for washing, food that barely nourishes, and rooms that never seem clean. Fire, always present, always threatening. Shadows that stretch like fingers across hallways. Sounds and smells that intrude on every sense. And, all the while, the invisible pressure of social expectation, labor, and vigilance. It's easy to romanticize the past. Gaslight flickers, lace curtains billow, polished floors gleam, and you might think, it's so quaint. But the truth is, these homes were challenging, exhausting, and sometimes dangerous. They demanded constant attention, physical effort, and mental resilience. And yet, people endured. Children, servants, parents, families, they survived, day after day, often without complaint, often without recognition. Endurance is the common thread here. It is the quiet triumph that often goes unnoticed in history. Warmth was temporary, comfort fleeting, safety fragile, yet life continued. People adapted, they learned, they endured, and they persevered in ways that modern life, with its climate control, plumbing, and instant meals, makes hard to imagine. Every room, every task, every sensory intrusion was part of a survival lesson. Cold taught preparation, fire taught respect, smells taught adaptation, noise taught vigilance, shadows and darkness taught mental alertness, work taught discipline, pain, discomfort, and illness taught resilience. The house itself was a teacher, shaping not just bodies but minds, molding endurance as surely as any parent or master. And the people themselves are remarkable in this context. Servants who rise before dawn and work until long after dusk. Children learning to navigate cold, illness, and danger. Parents who manage household, labor, and expectations simultaneously. All of them immersed in the rhythms of a house that never stops, yet surviving nonetheless. Their survival was not accidental. It was deliberate, continuous, and often unacknowledged. Modern comfort feels effortless in comparison. Central heating, running water, reliable light, insulated walls, safe kitchens, and sanitations. These are privileges we take for granted. But in a Victorian house, every comfort was earned. Every meal, every clean sheet, every warm room was the result of careful, often exhausting effort. Appreciation of modern convenience is easier once you understand the alternative. A life where survival itself was achievement. And yet, despite the hardships, life in a Victorian house was full of small victories. A room warmed by a fire, a meal completed successfully, laundry finished, children tucked into bed safely, the family healthy for another week, another month. These were not trivial moments, they were proof of endurance and resilience. Each small victory was an act of survival, quietly monumental in the context of daily life. Reflecting on all of this, you begin to see the house differently. It is beautiful, yes, but also demanding. It is elegant, yes, but also exacting. It is orderly, yes, but also unrelenting. It is a space of challenge as much as comfort, teaching lessons of endurance, vigilance, and adaptation that modern homes rarely require. As the day ends, and the house settles into its nocturnal rhythm, there is a calmness here, too. The house breathes, creaks, and hums like a living entity. Shadows stretch and retreat, fires flicker, smells linger and fade. The occupants, exhausted but persistent, rest, adapt, and prepare for another day. Life continues, endurance continues, survival continues. And perhaps this is the final lesson. Surviving a Victorian house was not about avoiding discomfort. It was not about escaping danger or achieving perfect hygiene. It was about learning to live fully within the constraints of a complex, demanding environment. It was about observing, adapting, enduring. It was about quiet resilience, practiced every day, every hour, in every room. When you leave the house, whether physically or in imagination, you carry a new understanding. Modern comfort is a gift. Endurance is not always visible, but it is real. The elegance of a room or the gleam of a polished floor belies the effort, the vigilance, and the resilience required to exist there. And that effort, the quiet, relentless, human effort, is what truly deserves recognition. So, if you think you could survive a day, an evening, or even a single hour in a Victorian house, pause. Consider the cold, the smell, the fire, the labor, the shadows, the mental strain, And then remember that people did this for lifetimes. They endured, adapted, and survived in a world that tested every sense, every skill, and every nerve. Survival was not optional. It was the measure of life itself. And in that, there is a quiet kind of awe and appreciation, not of suffering, but of human resilience, perseverance, and adaptability. The house sleeps now, and so do its occupants. Fires smolder gently in the hearth, shadows recede into corners, and the lingering scent of coal, damp, and daily life settles into calm. Life continues tomorrow, and the cycle of endurance repeats. But for tonight, the lesson remains clear. Surviving a Victorian house, in every sense, was itself an achievement. And knowing this, you may lie back, draw the blankets close, and appreciate the quiet miracle of modern comfort, all while drifting slowly into sleep. So after everything we've seen, the smells, the sickness, the cold nights, and the daily dangers, do you think you'd actually survive a full 24 hours in a Victorian house? Or would you be tapping out before breakfast? If this video surprised you, give it a like. It really helps the channel reach more history lovers like you. And if you haven't already, subscribe for more fascinating and sometimes unsettling journeys into the past. We'd love to hear from you. Do drop a comment and tell us which part of Victorian life you found the hardest to imagine living with. Was it the hygiene, the lighting, or the sheer lack of comfort? And when you're ready to keep exploring, check out the videos on screen now for more stories about everyday life in history, the kind they don't always show in movies. Thanks for spending some time in the past with us. Sleep easy tonight, with indoor plumbing,